I cheated on him. But it wasn't that simple. It never is it? The version he tells people is sharp, clean. She slept with someone else. Just like that. Like flipping a light switch off and walking away from the dark room we once called love. And maybe in his story, I'm the villain in red lipstick and silence, shattering his trust just because I could. But life doesn't move in clean lines. It tangles. When I met Josh, he was stability wrapped in warmth. Steady, kind. The kind of man who texted to ask if I'd eaten and remembered to wear a jacket. We fell into something solid. Dependable. The kind of love you plan futures with. But slowly, almost invisibly, I started to disappear in that steadiness. I was a photographer. I thrived in movement, chaos, color. He was an accountant. He thrived in numbers, neatness, predictability. At first, our differences felt like balance. Later, like suffocation. Every choice, what we ate, where we lived, when we visited his parents, became a compromise. My dreams started fitting into his calendar. My art got pushed to weekends. Then postponed to after we get married. Then once we have the house. Then I began waking up wondering if this version of my life was something I chose or something I fell into with my eyes closed. Then came Damien. He was a visiting poet giving a talk at a gallery downtown. I was photographing the event. He noticed me, not just my camera. Me, the way I tilted my head when I looked through the lens, the things I mumbled when the light wasn't right. He asked me questions, not about Josh or my wedding plans, but about me, my art, my voice, my silence. It wasn't planned. It wasn't even romantic at first. Just two people talking after too many glasses of wine. But one conversation turned into 3, then 10. And suddenly, my phone buzzed with messages that made me feel seen. I slept with him. Once. And immediately after, I sat on the floor of my apartment, knees pulled to my chest, knowing the world I'd built with Josh was about to break. Because no matter how justified I could try to make it, betrayal isn't about logic. It's about trust, and I broke his. When I told Josh, he didn't yell, didn't throw anything. He just stared at me like he didn't recognize who I was. Why? Was all he asked. I wanted to scream, because I was drowning, Josh. And I didn't even know it until someone reminded me what it felt like to breathe. But all I said was, it wasn't about him. It was about me, which is the truth, even if it sounds like a cop-out. He left, and he had every right to. People always want a villain in stories like these. They want black and white, cheater and victim, right and wrong. But here's what they never talk about. How easy it is to lose yourself in someone else's life. How sometimes cheating isn't about desire. It's about a desperate need to feel alive again. I won't defend what I did, but I will say this. It wasn't that simple. It never is. In the weeks that followed, silence became my roommate. Not just the absence of Josh's voice, but the kind of silence that crawls under your skin. The silence of knowing you hurt someone who didn't deserve it. The silence of empty drawers and toothbrush holders. Of photos taken down and texts left on read. It echoed louder than any argument could have. Friends picked sides, as they do. Some dropped away like dead leaves. Others stayed but treated me like glass, like they couldn't decide whether to support me or scold me. I didn't blame them. Honestly, I couldn't even decide what I deserved. What hurt the most was realizing that, even though I had been lonely in the relationship, I was lonelier now. And Damien? He was never meant to be a forever. He didn't ghost me or anything dramatic like that. Just faded out after the truth came out. We both knew what it was. He was a spark. A wake-up call. Not the answer. Months passed. I threw myself into my photography like it was the only thing left of me that still made sense. I started freelancing again. Took trips by myself. Captured places I'd always said I'd go but never did because there was always a we to consider. In the quiet, I started to learn the difference between guilt and growth. Yes, I had done something wrong. No, it didn't mean I was irredeemable. But it did mean I needed to face why I let it happen. Not just the act, but the hollow that came before it. One rainy Thursday, I saw Josh again. I was shooting a charity gala downtown, and he was there with colleagues. He looked good, lighter, somehow, and when our eyes met across the room, there wasn't hate there, just history. Later that night, we spoke. It wasn't a reconciliation. It wasn't even closure. Just two people finally honest with each other. "I spent so long being angry," he said quietly. "But eventually I realized you weren't happy. And maybe I wasn't either. We were just too used to each other to admit it." I nodded. "I'm sorry it ended the way it did." "I know," he said. "I am too." We hugged, awkwardly, briefly, and with the kind of tenderness that only exists between people who once meant everything to each other. That night, for the first time in a long while, I didn't cry, because this isn't a story about redemption or rekindled love. It's about reckoning, about breaking and rebuilding, about how some mistakes come with consequences, but also with clarity. I cheated on him, but it wasn't that simple. And now, finally, I understand why. After that night, something shifted. Not in a cinematic, everything's fixed way, but in a quieter, truer sense. Like a wound that finally stopped bleeding and started forming scar tissue. You never forget it's there, but you stop flinching every time you brush against it. I moved out of the apartment, Josh, and I used to share. I'd stayed there too long, haunted by memories that whispered every time I walked in the kitchen or passed by the hallway mirror. I found a smaller place, sunlight-drenched, crooked floors, with creaky steps that reminded me I was still moving, still standing. Alone, yes, but whole. It's strange how infidelity becomes your label. People hear one part of the story, and they seal you in it. Cheater. Like that one choice erases the years you were loyal. The mornings you made coffee just the way he liked it. The nights you cried because you knew something was breaking, but didn't know how to fix it. But I learned something. Healing isn't about proving your goodness to others. It's about facing yourself when there's no one else left to applaud or forgive you. And doing the work anyway. So I did. I started therapy. I talked, really talked, for the first time in years, about my patterns, about the way I'd been raised to keep peace, even when I was unhappy, about how I tied my worth to being chosen, to being needed, even if it meant losing myself. I unpacked it all, the messy, ugly parts. And for the first time, I didn't justify what I did. I understood it. One day, I got a message from Josh. Just a photo of a book I once loved, tucked between his arm and a cup of coffee. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. It was just a nod across time, an acknowledgement that we were part of each other's story, even if we didn't get the ending we'd planned. I didn't reply, not because I was angry, but because sometimes silence is a kind of punctuation. Now I live differently. I say no more. I pause before I sacrifice pieces of myself for someone else's comfort. I don't chase relationships to fill a void. I create. I travel. I laugh loudly without checking who's listening. And sometimes, yes, I remember Josh, not with regret, but with gratitude, because that heartbreak forced me to find myself again. So here it is, the truth people rarely want to hear. Yes, I cheated. No, it wasn't okay. But it wasn't that simple. It never is. And if you're still reading, still wondering how someone who strayed can say all this without asking for pity, it's because this isn't a plea. It's a confession, not of a crime, but of a transformation. And so, that chapter closed, not with fireworks or flames, but with quiet understanding. I won't pretend I'm proud of what I did, but I am proud of what came after. I learned that sometimes we break things not because we want to hurt someone, but because we've been hurting ourselves for too long without realizing it. And sometimes the greatest apology isn't begging for forgiveness. It's becoming someone better. Josh moved on. I've heard he's seeing someone new. I hope she makes him laugh the way I used to. I hope he feels chosen every day. As for me, I'm still learning, still healing. But now, I move through the world with open eyes and an honest heart, not chasing perfection, just peace. Because while the mistake was mine, the growth is too. And that's how the story ends. Not with a perfect love, but with a woman who finally found her way back to herself.